I never imagined the heartbreaking journey behind Harland Sanders' KFC success. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The air was thick, full of tension and unspoken words. My hands trembled as I clutched the crumpled letter, the jagged edges cutting into my skin. My heart felt heavy, like a stone lodged in my chest. I sat in that tiny kitchen, the scent of fried chicken lingering, almost mocking me. Harlem was more than just another name in the bustling city. He was a beacon of hope, a man with dreams that flickered like old bulbs desperate for power. He was my uncle, the dreamer, the fighter. He was always smiling, his laughter booming through the cracks of our small home. I remember running to him after school, the sound of his warm voice filling the space. But that all changed, with one fateful morning. "Uncle Harlem, don't go," I had pleaded, gripping his arm as he prepared to leave. He smiled down at me, his eyes bright with ambition. "He'll be back with something special. Just you wait." Little did I know, that was the last time I would hear his laughter, his words echoing like a distant memory. Days turned into weeks. The once vibrant chicken shop became a hollow shell. The boards creaked under the weight of secrets. Whispers surfaced, talk of betrayal, missed opportunities that twisted like thorns in my heart. Each night, I lay awake, imagining the struggles he faced. I wondered if he was cold, if there was food to fill his empty stomach. The rumors transformed into shadows in the corners of my mind. Friends turned to strangers. Conversations hushed when I walked by. What had happened? I didn't know. I felt lost like a lone bird trapped in a storm. Then, one rainy evening, everything changed. A frantic knock on the door shattered the silence. My mother's face paled as she opened it. A figure stood drenched. It was Harlem, but he was not the man who left. His eyes were hollow, haunted. "Harlem, what happened?" I gasped, fear gripping my throat. He collapsed inside, a shell of the man I adored. They took everything, he stammered, hands shaking. My heart raced. What could possibly take away everything? The air grew heavy with despair. I followed him to the living room. It smelled like despair and regret. Between ragged breaths, he spoke of betrayal, of friends he thought he could trust. My chest tightened as I took in his words, the painful detail wrapping around me like a heavy cloak. Then came the blow. As I stepped back, breathless, he revealed a secret so deep, it felt like a dagger plunging into my soul. "I'm in debt, I owe them everything," he whispered. My world tilted. What could I do? "Tell me you're kidding," I choked, tears burning in my eyes. I couldn't understand. How could far-off dreams turn into such nightly horrors? Just then, he reached for my hand, his grip firm yet trembling. "I need your help," he said, his voice cracking. My stomach churned. Could I really face this darkness? It was one thing to hear the tales, another to stand face to face with such devastation. I stared at him, confusion swirling in my mind. Would I lose him too? Would our family be shattered once again? The shadows lengthened, painting a haunting picture. I felt a sharp pang in my gut. The path ahead was unclear, riddled with obstacles I couldn't foresee. I wished for answers. Answers that didn't come. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The following days crept by like shadows at dusk, each minute stretching endlessly, yet within them, hope flickered like a stubborn candle in a gusty room. My uncle's plight was a burden I couldn't carry alone, yet I knew he needed me. We were tethered by blood, yet the weight of his secrets created chasms of fear and uncertainty between us. As I sat at our kitchen table, staring blandly at an empty plate, I couldn't shake the feeling of an impending storm. My mother kept her distance, her absence echoing louder than any words of comfort. She was stoic, and I admired her strength, yet I ached for her to show some vulnerability, some sign that she, too, was grappling with this turmoil. One afternoon, amid clouds that promised rain, I decided to visit the dilapidated chicken shop. I knew Harlem had avoided the place since his return, but I felt compelled to stand where it all happened, to seek some semblance of clarity among the wreckage. The bell above the door rang hollow as I entered, and the familiar scent of spices twisted in the air, invoking fragments of happier times. I wandered through the empty hall, each step echoing my sense of loss. Memories of Harlem crafting secret recipes, his laughter mixing with the sizzling of oil, had painted a vivid canvas in my mind. But now, the walls were cloaked in sorrow, graffiti of dreams gone awry. In the back, where the kitchen once buzzed with life, I found a crumpled piece of paper. It lay partly hidden beneath the table. I bent to pick it up, my heart racing as if it held answers. It was a menu. Harlem had scrawled notes on the margins, ideas for new dishes, hopes for the future. I clutched it to my chest, tears pricking my eyes. He had fought so hard to bring his vision to life. This place had been his heart, and now it echoed with despair. Just as I was about to leave, a kind elderly woman approached. "You look like you could use a friend," she said softly, warmth radiating from her. Her apron was stained, yet she wore it like a badge of honor, the scent of her cooking wafting through the air. "My name is Miss Rita. I used to come here for the best chicken sandwiches in the whole city." Her smile was a bright city light flickering in dark nights that I could only nod, overwhelmed. "My uncle owns this shop," I whispered, feeling vulnerable for the first time. "I know. He's been through a lot, hasn't he?" Her voice was laced with understanding. "I've seen many like him. Dreams can turn into nightmares when they slip through our fingers." I let her words settle in my heart, and we talked for what felt like hours. She shared stories of resilience and revival, her body language mirroring a hopefulness that I craved. "Sometimes, kindness is all we need to keep going," she said, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. Her presence was like a balm, but as I prepared to leave, a shadow crossed her face. "He will need more than just hope, dear. He needs a plan. Have you thought about how to help him?" The question hung in the air, and as I walked home, my mind raced. Harlem needed a way out of this dark corner. But how could I, a teenager with no experience, begin to tackle the reality of his situation? By evening, the rain began to patter against the windows, rhythmic and soothing, yet behind it lay a cacophony of doubt. The fragile peace I had found with Miss Rita's words seemed to shatter as reality set in once more. When I returned home, Harlem was sitting alone at the table, his face shadowed under the flickering light. The crumpled letter I had found lay next to him. "I know you went to the shop," he stated, not looking up. "Did you find anything of use?" His words were a challenge disguised as inquiry. My heart raced, torn by the desire to shield him from pain while needing to bring forth the warmth of the woman's wisdom. "I met someone. She reminded me that kindness can help heal," I admitted. "Maybe we could make a plan." Harlem's eyes lifted, and for a brief moment, the weight of darkness lifted. Yet, I could still see the flicker of fear beneath the surface like a dangerous undercurrent. "A plan?" he repeated, the word almost foreign to him. Before I could respond, the sound of a faint knocking interrupted us. Confused, I turned, my heart racing, and as I opened the door, the figure standing there left my breath trapped in my throat. It was Victor, the man Harlem had once considered a brother, now the embodiment of betrayal. My heart sank as dread washed over me. Had he come to drag Harlem back into the abyss? I felt torn between the hope of rebuilding and the fear of the past encroaching once more. The storm outside mirrored the turmoil within me, and as Victor stepped forward, I realized that the most challenging battles were far from over. Would this be the moment our family shattered again? Would Harlem bend, or would he rise? The answer lay just out of reach. The dreary October rain drummed against the roof like a relentless melody, an ominous symphony that seemed to echo my heart's growing uncertainty. Victor stood at the threshold, the very air taut with memories that sparked both loathing and longing. In all the chaos my mind had spun, I hadn't prepared for this moment, this confrontation that loomed over us like a storm cloud. "Harlem," Victor began, his voice smooth, though I could hear the undercurrent of desperation. "It's been a long time." He let the words hang in the air, filled with the weight of their shared past, the laughter, the dreams, the impending betrayal that had shattered it all. "She doesn't want you here," I blurted out before I could catch myself. With the tension thick enough to slice, I felt the need to protect what was left of my uncle. But Harlem only sighed, a sound heavy with resignation, as he rose from the table. "Don't," he said quietly to me, his tone neither harsh nor overly gentle. This involves me, not you. He glanced back at Victor, whose presence felt like an old wound being pried open. What do you want? Victor stepped forward, crossing the threshold uninvited. I want to make things right. You know I never meant for things to go down the way they did. I was lost, Harlem. You know that. His eyes darted to me briefly, a flicker of recognition mixing with the shadows of deceit. That moment, I felt trapped between their tumultuous bond and my instinct to shield my uncle from the very person who had pulled him into despair. There remained an undeniable warmth in Harlem's posture. It was a flicker of Hopian urge to find redemption, to mend what had been so carelessly undone. But trust is not easily restored, nor is it ever recovered without sacrifice. You want to make things right? Harlem's voice held a steely edge. You walked away when I needed you most. Victor opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. Instead, he let the silence stretch, heavy and agonizing, as if he was trying to gather the courage to face the broken shards of their friendship. I felt my heart race and sink with the drumming rain. Tensions threaded through the air, pulsing like a wounded heartbeat. Can I at least come inside? Victor implored, finally breaking the suffocating silence. The vulnerability in his eyes was both a plea and a challenge, extending an olive branch laced with urgency. Harlem shifted uncomfortably, staring off into the distance, as if the answer lay buried in the shadows creeping along the walls. Fine. Then, almost as an afterthought, he added, but we have a lot to discuss. Victor stepped further inside, and I braced myself for the emotions that might surface. My heart pounded in my chest, a conflicting urgency to both listen and protect, to learn and to shield. I wanted to believe that Harlem could find light again with the help of an old friend, yet every instinct screamed that Victor's arrival could ignite a wildfire of past grievances. As the three of us settled into the unyielding silence, I noticed Harlem's fingers trace over the letter I had found earlier that day. It was a desperate reminder of dreams unfulfilled, a crumpled map of the journey he had embarked on alone. Did he truly want to venture down this path with Victor? Forgiveness may often bloom in the midst of pain, but trust was an entirely different garden to nurture. Suddenly, the doorbell rang again, breaking the fragile ambience, and my pulse quickened with a strange sense of foreboding. As I turned to answer, I was greeted by a face so familiar, yet so foreign. It was Emily, Victor's sister, whom I hadn't seen since the day they all drifted apart. Her expression was wrought with concern, tinged with something that felt like regret. Please, I need to talk to both of you, she said breathlessly. Her words hung heavy, misty with unresolved history. What are you doing here? Victor shot back, his voice tight with irritation. That I am here to warn you about something, she replied, getting straight to the point. People are talking. There are whispers about Harlem's past. If you don't act fast, it might all come crashing down. Her words felt like a hammer striking a fragile piece of glass, clarity mixed with dread. The world outside seemed to fade momentarily, engulfing us into an unnerving stillness that would either tear us apart or bind our fates irrevocably. In that moment, the implications of her arrival echoed through the air, leaving us all grappling for our next move. The storm raged on, both outside and within, as each revelation tucked itself into the fabric of our intertwined lives, drawing us closer to truths we had yet to confront. Could Harlem truly overcome the shadows of his past? And would Victor and Emily's presence usher him back into the light? Or would their revelation shatter the little hope that remained? With every heartbeat weighing heavier with possibility, I braced myself for the answers we might never be ready to face. The rain continued its relentless assault outside, a backdrop to the fragile tension inside the dimly lit room. My breath hitched as Emily's presence seeped through the air, thickening it with memories better left buried. Her eyes darted between Victor and Harlem, and I could feel the unspoken history weighing down on all of us. You didn't have to come, Victor said, his voice laced with irritation and something I couldn't quite place. Fear, perhaps? Fear of what their family's legacy had become in the eyes of the community they once were a part of, a tapestry now frayed at the edges. Harlem dropped the letter, his fingers trembling as they hovered above the paper. What are you talking about? Whispers about me. His gaze narrowed, the weight of his past clashing with the present, and I couldn't help but feel the swell of desperation in his voice. Yes, Emily pressed urgently. People know. About the accident, the money, the lies. If they start talking, it won't just affect you. Harlem, it could destroy everything you've built. The force of her words ricocheted through the room, igniting the kindling of vulnerability that had been simmering since Victor's arrival. I watched Harlem's walls start to crack, fissures shimmering with uncertainty and creeping dread. But I've worked so hard, he whispered, the corners of his mouth tightening against the encroaching despair. I can't let that shadow define me forever. Harlem, Victor interjected, stepping closer, his voice softening. That's why I'm here. To help you navigate this. We can face this together. For a fleeting moment, I could see a ghost of the bond they once shared, flickers of hopes extinguished too soon, but faintly glowing in the dim light. The rain pounded against the window, a violent reminder that chaos often danced on the edge of familiarity. I don't need your pity, Victor. Harlem shot back, the steel creeping back into his tone as if he drew comfort from the confrontation, while simultaneously waving away the kindness Victor extended. Is it pity? Victor challenged. Or trying to be your friend again? You've been alone too long, Harlem. I know I messed up, but I want to make amends. Before Harlem could respond, Emily took a step forward, her voice barely above a whisper. The moment you all came back together, the whispers started again. It's not just you, Harlem. It's Victor too. They're connecting dots that lead straight to both of you. A beat of silence lingered, pregnant with possibilities, as I watched the crumbling resolve on Harlem's face. It was like standing on the brink of a precipice, the winds of change howling below. I thought back to the letter barely read, barely understood. Maybe if Harlem shared his side of the story, he could reshape how others saw him. But how could one rewrite their narrative when the ink of past mistakes still bled through? I don't want to go back, was all Harlem managed to say, the raw truth hanging in the air like a delicate thread, ready to snap. Victor reached out, his hand almost grazing Harlem's arm, an offer, a plea, but Harlem recoiled as if the touch burned. I flinched at the stark reality. What could be rebuilt was being torn down in quiet agony. Trust is rare but precious, Emily said softly, trying to bridge the growing chasm. It doesn't mean forgetting, but it's the only way to keep the past from consuming us. I felt stirred by her words, finding unexpected strength in her vulnerability. If only it were that simple. Forgiveness weighed heavier than a feather and could crush as easily. But the moment was shattered, crumbling like the walls of trust we had fought to uphold. The doorbell chimed again, slicing through the air, reverberating like a warning. My heart thumped against my chest as I exchanged anxious glances with the others. More knocks. Incessant and urgent, it felt as if the universe was pressing us for answers we were ill-prepared to deliver. Who else could it be? I breathed, dread pooling in my stomach. Whatever it is, we can't answer it now, Harlem murmured, disbelief marring his features, yet all I saw was a flame of fear sparking in his eyes. With Victor's past reaching perilously close to the surface, could Harlem truly confront his own demons without fully understanding what awaited him? We braced ourselves as the air thickened around us, each of us trapped in a web woven from fallen trust and dampened dreams. Harlem had proven his strength in a past few could endure. But now we were teetering on the brink, facing an uncertain future where secrets might unravel with a single harsh word or a single knock. As the door creaked open, just a sliver, the unmistakable sound of hurried breathing slipped through the opening whisper of a life we had thought lost, but now rushed back, drawing us closer toward inevitability. And I realized, some chains aren't easily broken, but the unexpected intertwining of old and new could ignite a fire that either burned us all or catalyzed a rebirth. Could we face the truth together? Or would we crumble like the raindrops cascading down the window, forever splitting into shards? The door swung open, revealing a figure draped in shadows, breathless and slightly disheveled. My heart pounded as I took in the sudden apparition, a young woman, no older than 20, her hair a wild nest of curls cascading around her face, framing eyes that flickered with urgency and fear. I recognized her focus. It felt oddly familiar, as if she were a mirror reflecting the turmoil swirling within each of us. "Please, I need to talk to Harlem," she gasped, each word punctuated with a breathy urgency that sent a shiver down my spine. Harlem stood frozen, his body rigid, as though recognition had seized him in a vice grip. "Who are you?" he demanded, confusion lacing his tone. It was then I noticed the faint resemblance between them tightened features, the same hint of a smile that rarely saw the light of day. It's Sophia," she managed between breaths, stepping into the room with an air of desperation. "I don't have much time. You have to listen to me." At the name, a flicker of recognition sparked in Harlem's gaze, edging toward disbelief. Victor shifted uncomfortably beside him, the tension rising like steam, thick, heavy, unnerving. Emily and I exchanged glances, the atmosphere crackling as if submerged in electricity. Sophia hadn't just returned. She had brought with her the weight of expectation, a storm waiting to unleash. "What do you mean you don't have much time?" Harlem asked, his voice dropping an octave, the guards around him momentarily lowering to let in a crack of vulnerability. "What happened?" Her eyes darted between us, searching for an understanding that transcended our confusion. "I overheard people talking. They're going to," she hesitated, swallowing hard. "They're going to expose everything. Harlem. They're closing in." I couldn't wait any longer. With that, the floodgate of emotions burst open within Harlem. The anger, the betrayal, the unshakable fear of losing everything weighed down on him, flooding his thoughts even as he struggled to maintain composure. "Expose what, Sophia? What do you know?" "About the accident," she replied softly, eyes glistening with unshed tears, as though she were mourning another life shattered long ago. "About you and the truth. The truth that no one knows." For a split second, the room became a silent tomb, the air stagnant with the weight of her revelation. I could see the hesitation flickering behind Harlem's hardened exterior, the man who had reshaped his identity, now confronted by the remnants of a past threatening to claw its way into the light. Victor moved closer, a protective guise inching into his demeanor. "What do you mean? What truth?" Sophia took a breath, her voice trembling yet unwavering. "You're not the only one who suffered that night. There were others, families torn apart, lives forever altered. They think they can pin it all on you, but they don't know the whole story." The implications of her words hung in the air, pregnant with unspoken truths. My heart sank. It was an echo of fear, of a haunting that refused to let us find peace. Harlem's hands balled into fists at his sides, the tremor in his fingers a stark contrast to the steely resolve he often wore. "And what do you propose we do?" he asked, a harsh rasp that caught me off guard. "Fight back? Do you think they'll believe you? They'll label me a monster all over again." Sophia stepped closer, tears pooling in her eyes. "We can't just let this happen. You deserve to tell your side. You deserve to be heard." "But Harlem, there's something else, something that might turn it on its head." The gravity of her statement lashed around my throat, constricting as I sensed the weight of what lay ahead. My mind raced with possibilities, each more frightening than the last. What if the truth turned out more destructive than liberating? "What do you mean?" Harlem demanded, though the way his jaw clenched shouted his unwillingness to hope for anything redeeming. Before she could answer, the rain outside quieted momentarily, an unnatural stillness washing over us. In that silence, a flash of lightning streaked across the sky, momentarily illuminating Sophia's face, revealing the weight of the secret she buried, so many secrets cloaked in layers of betrayal and pain. "I have something that may help," she said, almost hesitantly. "Something that connects all of us, something from that night. But if I tell you, it could put you all at risk." A breathless murmur swept through the room, uncertainty blending with an insatiable curiosity. I could feel the tension, though the air felt lighter yet heavy with unspoken dread, and I realized we stood on the precipice of devastation or salvation, petrified at the thought of what we might unleash if we chose to uncover the morass of our past. "Tell me," Harlem finally breathed, the fight dying from his voice. "Tell me everything." And as Sophia prepared to unveil the buried truths that had shackled Harlem for what felt like eternity, I understood one thing clearly. Darkness, once unearthed, has a way of consuming everything in its path, leaving behind nothing but heartbreak and ashes. Yet in that moment, surrounded by the warmth of tear-slicked cheeks and trembling voices, I dared to hope. Perhaps amidst the wreckage, amidst the horror, there rested not just despair, but also the seeds of something more incredible: healing. If we could only face it together. But just as the fragile thread of this hope began to stitch itself into our hearts, a loud crash erupted outside, sending us all into a startled panic. What was that? I gasped, dread flooding my senses anew. The answer lay hidden beneath the chaos, and as the shadows danced on the walls, I feared that the past might surge forth, dragging us all, unwilling participants once more, into the eye of the storm. The air felt electric and thick, pulsing with a sense of foreboding just as the thunder rumbled overhead, shattering our fragile moment of hope. We all turned towards the window, hearts racing as we strained to decipher the source of the commotion outside. The pounding of footsteps echoed through the walls, a frantic sound that resonated like an alarm bell in my chest. "Harlem, we have to get out of here," Victor urged, his voice a blend of concern and urgency that pierced through the dark haze gathering around us. "If they're here to expose you, we can't risk being caught, Harlem said decisively, though his voice trembled slightly. "We need to hear what Sophia has to say first. If we leave now, we'll be running from the truth." Sophia's expression shifted from panic to defiance, resolve layering over her fear. "He's right," she affirmed, stepping closer to Harlem. "We can't let fear drive us away from the answers we need." Outside, the noise escalated, a cacophony of shouts followed by the unmistakable clatter of metal against pavement. All at once, uncertainty washed over me as I realized that whatever was unfolding out there could change the course of everything we had been wrestling with in here. "Stay near the door," I whispered to Emily, my heart racing as I tried to keep my composure. I could sense her own turmoil churning behind her calm facade, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape route. "I am not leaving you," she replied fiercely, taking a step closer to me. The solidarity in her voice offered a small comfort amidst the chaos, an anchoring reminder that we were not facing this storm alone. "Harlem," Sophia's voice interrupted, steady despite the tremor beneath it. "Please listen. The only way you can clear your name is to confront the truth of what happened that night. You need to know what I found out." Just as she spoke, a loud crash sounded again, this time closer, rattling the very windows of the room. Shadows danced in the flickering candlelight, twisting into specters of our past as we braced ourselves against the encroaching darkness that clawed at the edges of our sanctuary. "Tell me," Harlem said again, his voice weary with the weight of expectation. "What do you know?" Sophia took a deep breath, her vulnerability shining through her fierce determination. "There was a witness, someone who knows what really happened, someone who can help you. But they're scared. They thought they were safe. But what?" Victor pressed, his knuckles turning white as he clenched his hands. She hesitated, fear flickering in her eyes like the shadows that danced around us. "But they're being hunted. If the people after you find them, then it's not just me at risk," Harlem replied, realization dawning, flooding his expression with horror. "They'll go after anyone connected to me." We all stood silent for a moment, absorbing the weight of her words. My heart sank, comprehension washing over me like a tidal wave. The threat was no longer confined to Harlem. It extended outwards, wrapping its sinister fingers around every person that dared to stand by him, including us. The crashing sounds intensified, punctuated by urgent voices outside that grew louder, more frantic. My pulse quickened, and I felt a mixture of panic and disappointment clawing its way up my throat. Suddenly, a frantic pounding reverberated against the door, and we exchanged terrified glances. "Hide," Victor commanded, his voice sharp but filled with an underlying softness, the type one would reserve for cementing confidence in something frail. As we scrambled for cover, a sharp thought pierced through my survival instincts, the looming question of who was on the other side, and the truth that our small sanctuary might soon be invaded by enemies intertwined with our very existence. That I ducked behind a narrow desk, scarcely breathing as I glanced at Harlem, his face a storm of resolve and anguish. "What are we going to do?" I murmured, fear creeping into my heart. That he made eye contact with me, and in that moment, a flicker of something shifted in understanding, a bond forged out of desperation. "We fight," he breathed, determination dawning anew amidst the looming shadows. "We tell our story, even if it means facing the darkness head-on." Both relief and dread coursed through me, knowing that whatever storm lay outside, an even greater one brewed within us, a tempest fueled by grief, secrets, and the thin lines separating justice from vengeance. But just as Sophia began to speak again, her voice barely above a whisper, the door slammed open, and a figure burst into the room, silhouetted against the flickering flame of our last lantern. Time seemed to freeze, and I held my breath, dread wrapping its icy fingers around my heart, as I realized I knew that figure well, an old acquaintance whose allegiance had always been a riddle. Now ensnared in this bewildering tapestry of pain, we were not yet ready to confront. "Stop!" the figure shouted, eyes scanning the room in wild desperation. "You don't understand what you're all about to unleash." The words hit me like a blow, echoing ominously in the heavy silence. As the figure's identity registered in my mind, my heart plummeted. Everything I thought I knew was thrust into jeopardy and shattered into a million shards. The future I had dared to hope for now hanging precariously by a thread. The figure stood before us, breathless, electric energy crackling in the suddenly heavy air. Damon. His presence sent a cascade of unease rippling through the fragile barrier of our gathered resolve. I could hardly process the shock of seeing him again, the past intertwining with my present in a way that felt both familiar and utterly foreign. Damon. Harlem's disbelief was palpable, his mind racing to piece together how this particular thread of fate had woven back into our lives. "What are you doing here? You need to listen," Damon insisted, stepping further inside the room, eyes alight with urgency. "You think you're uncovering the truth, but there's more at stake than you realize. You don't just expose the darkness, Harlem, it can consume you." "What do you know?" Victor demanded, plants of defiance making a stand within a thick air of uncertainty. "All this talk about the truth, if it's dangerous, shouldn't we seek it anyway? Don't we have the right to know what's haunting us, not if it puts you in the crosshairs?" Damon replied, his voice imbued with an intensity that felt righteous but also alarmingly desperate. "You're caught in a current that runs deeper than you understand, roots entwined with deception, betrayal, and perhaps even murder." Sophia shivered at his words, reaching instinctively for Harlem's hand, clinging to him as if he were a source of strength amidst the storm. "What are you saying?" Her voice was a fragile thread amidst the clanging chaos of our emotions. "Back that night," Damon started, eyes flashing like storm clouds, "there was another player. One who's been pulling the strings, watching, waiting, someone connected to Harlem, but hidden in plain sight." "What does that mean?" My voice trembled, uncertainty washing over me like cold waves relentlessly crashing against the shore. "Who?" Damon's silence stretched uncomfortably, creating fissures in the sanctuary of our gathered courage. "You're headed for a precipice you can't imagine, and the answers won't free you. They'll bind you all even tighter." Just then, another crash outside jolted us, as if the world were tightening around our sanctuary, pushing us toward the brink. Emily's fingers found mine, squeezing tightly as she leaned in closer, fear visibly alighting in her eyes. "How can we know what's right?" she whispered, her voice barely audible above the chaos. The question hung heavily in the air, reverberating in my chest as I searched Harlem's face. He was battling silent demons, deciphering the weight of Damon's revelations while the specter of despair loomed ever closer. "We must confront our past, even if it threatens to swallow us whole," Harlem finally responded, his voice ironclad amidst the swirling emotions. "If we have the chance to uncover the truth, we can't run from it." "Not anymore." The tension in the room thickened as Damon stepped back, his resolve transforming into a mask of weariness. "Then be prepared," he warned, "to confront the very heart of darkness. Trust no one, not even yourselves." Emily released my hand, taking a purposeful step forward, the flicker of candlelight casting soft shadows across her determined face. "What if we can face it together? If we stand united, searching for the truth, isn't that our greatest strength?" Damon's eyes softened, just a fraction, yet the gravity of his response remained firm. "Strength comes with scars. Hope is still a risk." My mind spun with a mix of dread and unexpected fire. The weight of Emily's words settled like a blanket, morphing into something warm though tinged with uncertainty. What exactly were we stepping into? But just as we began to form a plan, the room quaked beneath a sudden thunderous sound. A group of figures stormed in through the doorway. They were cloaked in darkness, their intent unmistakable. Panic reigned as they lunged toward Damon, who had little time to react. "Run!" he yelled, and instinct took over. We scattered in different directions, each of us trying to escape the clutches of fate that threatened to ensnare us. In that moment of chaos, as I darted towards an adjoining room, my heart pounded in my ears like a war drum, and the reality hit hard. Some truths could be fatal, and we were teetering dangerously close to a nightmare we weren't ready to face. But even amidst the fear, I couldn't shake the feeling that whispers of hope were lingering somewhere within the storm, waiting for us to find them. Then, I felt hands grip me from behind, pulling me roughly away, and the world spun as my breath caught. My heart sank, knowing that I faced not just the reckoning of secrets hidden far too long, but the bone-chilling truth that we were no longer merely pawns we'd become the players of a game with unforgiving stakes. And as my captor's identity became clear in the dim light, dread crystallized in my veins, for I could never have imagined the depths of betrayal that loomed ahead, entwined with the legacy of Harland Sanders and the success that came with scars. The darkness hung heavy in the air, wrapped around us like a suffocating shroud. I twisted to free myself from my captor's grip, desperate for a glimmer of hope to cut through the despair. The figure standing before me was unmistakable, the very embodiment of my worst fears. It was Elijah, Harlem's estranged brother, the ghost of the family I had scarcely known, now made fierce and real. "Let her go, Elijah." Harlem's voice rang like glass breaking, sharp and desperate. Dread washed over me. I could feel Harlem's heart pounding at the edges of the chaos, a fractured echo of the bond we once shared. "The truth must be uncovered. You know that, brother," he retorted, a twisted sneer playing across his lips. "But sometimes, the truth is a weapon." His gaze flicked back to me, and a flicker of something akin to remorse crossed his features, swiftly overshadowed by the hard resolve that had already enslaved him. "She's too close to you, Harlem. She'll be your downfall." Pain lanced through my chest, sharp and bitter. How could blood, the invisible thread that connected us in our vulnerability, unravel into something so menacing? The tension stilled in the room as the hidden lines of loyalty were pulled tight, threatening to snap and shatter all that I had come to grasp. I saw Damon out of the corner of my eye, struggling against the figures who had stormed in. For a fleeting moment, I wanted to believe he would come to my defense, that he would rally behind us like the champion I had always perceived him to be. But my hopes became subdued as each burst of fervor extracted a piece of hope into the abyss of uncertainty. "Listen to him," Damon shouted amidst the scuffle. "This isn't just about you, there are lives at stake. Let go." I cried, fear gripping my throat, compressing my voice into a strangled whisper. I looked between Elijah and Harlem, the rift between them pulsing with unspoken words, a reservoir of hurt that could easily drown us all. "Please, Elijah, don't do this. We can work together. We can find a way." "Work together?" Elijah's laughter was a brittle mockery. "You know nothing of collaboration, of scars born from sacrifice, from fights that nearly steal everything from you." He jerked me closer until I felt the warmth of his breath brush against my ear. "Harlem was too weak to face the truth about our family. But you're a different story. If you want to unravel it, then let's make it a game you won't forget." My eyes darted toward Harlem, who struggled to comprehend the gravity of the moment, torn between love and loyalty to his brother while shadowed by the specter of their past. "Elijah, don't," he pleaded, fingers stretching as if yearning to reach a bridge that had long since burned. "You don't have to do this." Damon forced himself forward, shaking off his captors with desperation. "You think sisters and brothers are strong enough to bear truth?" he shouted. "Try carrying the ghosts that haunt you. Family is more than blood, it's the bonds you forge." "Enough!" Elijah roared, his grip tightening on me, eyes ablaze with a glint of something dark and fervent. "You don't understand anything. You're just pawns. How naive to believe you can survive the shadows. You play with flames, and fire consumes those who preside over it." From behind the tumult, I could see Emily and Victor, fear wrestling with their own resolve, lurking at the fringes, uncertain of how they might intervene. With every passing second, the reality of my circumstances settled heavier, yet alongside the weight, a flicker of determination ignited. I would not let Elijah's madness define my story. "Harlem," I yelled out, hoping he could feel the weight of our shared hope amidst our current predicament. What if we embraced those shadows? What if we became more than just players in this game? Elijah's booming laughter shattered my fragile declaration. But behind the laughter, I glimpsed an echo of doubt. Harlem burned with newfound light, fierceness emerging in his eyes. You want the truth, Elijah? Then let's uncover it together. Let's confront our demons. Toy with something that truly exists, a reality. Where we stand united, a silence fell, trembling in the wake of possible reconciliation. But it was fleeting. Elijah's expression morphed into a mask of rage as he professed, "You're a fool if you believe you can unite what has been shattered." Just then, an explosion of sound erupted behind the shadows, a cacophony of voices that surged like a tide, spilling into the space and transforming it entirely. The walls shook, and in the following chaos, I caught sight of a familiar figure, Mira, my sister, standing in the doorway with an unexpected entourage of supporters who had long been lost in the fog of dilapidated connections. All at once, confusion sliced through the tension like a blade. The moment breathed change into the air and sent shivers racing down my spine. Was this a revelation of hope, or a stampede into further despair? As we tangled within our shattered pasts, trapped between the longing for kinship and the abyss of betrayal, I understood that the stakes encompassed more than mere survival. They had become the bittersweet essence of choice. One, I feared I may not survive. Then Mira spoke, the promise of resolution lingering in the air. "I know what you've all done, and I know who we really are." My heart stopped. The weight of her words resonated across the room, and the jigsaw pieces of our lives began to intersect in a way I had never anticipated. Even as Mira's words hung heavy in the air, a tumultuous current coursed between us all like the pull of unseen strings tethering a family teetering on the edge of destruction. I could see her resolve reflected in the eyes of the others, even those who had been silent, and it ignited a spark of courage deep within me. But beneath it all lingered a palpable tension, the fragile web of relationships threatening to dissolve under the weight of long-buried truths. "Mira, what do you mean?" Harlem's voice trembled as he stepped forward, the desperation etched into his features cutting through the chaos. His brother, Elijah, fumed, his hands still clasped around me, oblivious to the emotional storm brewing around him. Mira squared her shoulders, her gaze unwavering as she met Elijah's furious glare. "You think you know us, Elijah? You don't. Family means more than just the blood we share. It means the stories we tell and the paths we take together. It means confronting even the monsters we've hidden in our own backyards." The sincerity in her voice carved through the tension, and for a fleeting moment, I noticed a flicker of recognition cross Elijah's face, a crack in his fevered resolve. Yet, one step back was quickly overshadowed by the weight of his rage. "You've made a mistake, Mira. You think you can save them with your misguided beliefs? You don't know what's at stake here." I could feel the tide shifting, the ebb and flow of emotions swirling around us. My heart raced, racing alongside the clock that ticked ominously in the back of my mind. There was no way I could buckle under the pressure. Not now. Not when the pieces of our fractured family threatened to mold anew. "Mira, please," I implored, my voice laced with an urgency that verged on desperation. "The truth can feel like a weapon, but what if it's the only path forward? What if it's the key to healing together?" As I searched her face for strength, her eyes shone with unshed tears. She stepped nearer, filling the turbulent space between us. "I might not hold all the answers, but I want to fight for us. For all of us." "How naive," Elijah spat, his fingers tightening around my arm as if I were a lifeline he clung to in a storm. "You think you can easily erase the past? You think you can turn back time?" Yet this was not a fight I was willing to lose. We changed the narrative. We redefined what it means to be family. "Please, let's not let this spiral out of control. Our pain doesn't need to dictate our future," I urged, and with every word, I felt the remnants of my resolve solidifying amidst the cacophony of our anguish. Suddenly, a collective hush fell over the room as Victor, normally a figure of silent observation, stepped forward, his brow furrowed in thought. "Elijah, nothing in this life is certain. You speak of truth as if it were an absolute. But truth can morph. It can be weaponized or transformed." I turned to him, a heartbeat of stillness passing between us. Family isn't solely built on the blood we share, it's in the battles we choose to fight together. Let us not create more division. Enough, Elijah exclaimed, the fabric of sanity in his voice beginning to fray. But the slightest crack of doubt echoed in his words. Mira, what do you know? Harlem prompted, his voice steady yet laced with an undercurrent of dread. You said you knew who we really are. I can feel my whole world shattering. Don't you dare hold back. Her chin tilted defiantly as she summoned the courage to bear witness to the storm swirling around us. You may think you have the truth, Elijah, but you have failed to see the whole picture. Our father, he had dark secrets, secrets that could change everything we thought we understood about each other. Secrets that tie us beyond blood. The revelation struck like thunder, and my breath caught in my throat. I could feel the tension igniting anew as Mira's words hovered like a thick mist, shrouding us in uncertainty. Father Elijah faltered, his voice wavering ever so slightly as he turned to me, uncertainty dancing in his eyes. What did he do? In the shifting silence, Harlem stepped closer to Mira, each word dripping with urgency. Tell me, what do those secrets hold? And just like that, the lingering threads woven through our past pulled taut at the mention of a name steeped in darkness, an echo from a long-forgotten life. I felt like the world spiraled around me, caught between longing to unravel the truth and the fear of what it might reveal. Suddenly, from behind me, a loud crash reverberated in the hallway, shaking the walls, a reminder that we weren't alone in our struggle. Panic surged through me as I turned, unsure if the sound heralded something sinister or a glimmer of unforeseen support. Before I could process it, a figure burst into the room, one I had never expected to see. My heart plummeted, hope and despair wrestling in an endless cycle. What did I just walk into? She exclaimed. She was no stranger. It was Vanessa, my estranged childhood friend, the one whose loyalty had slipped through the cracks of our lives, and her sudden appearance reignited the chaos within. Vanessa. My voice trembled as I grappled with emotions, relief and apprehension all tangled into one. What are you doing here? She looked around her, taking in the scene with a mix of sympathy and understanding. How could she, of all people, show up now, in this moment fraught with despair? Is someone going to explain what kind of mess this is? Because I can't stand by and watch you all tear each other apart. A shift washed over the room, a silent plea that blossomed among us like a tenuous lifeline. As confrontation hung thick in the air, I couldn't shake the conviction buried deep within me. There was something more at stake, something hidden just beneath the surface that could reshape our reality. And as I met each of their eyes, the aroma of fear mingled with burgeoning hope, a potent reminder that even in the depths of darkness, we still had the power to illuminate the shadows together. But then, the walls didn't just echo with family secrets. They rumbled with a deeper intensity, a storm brewing out of sight, leading to a revelation that threatened our lives. And just as it seemed we'd reached the precipice of understanding, Mira looked past Elijah, her face contorting in horror. No, it can't be. You didn't. Before she could finish, a thunderous crash echoed from the outside, shaking the ground, sending tremors of unease through our hearts. Everything fractured in that instant, and all I could do was stand at the edge of the unknown, praying it wouldn't swallow us whole. The chaos exploded around us as the realization of my past fractured into shards like glass underfoot. I felt a sudden, suffocating weight, the turbulence of fear and uncertainty coiling tighter around our fragile coalition. Mira's anguished expression cut through the clamor, carrying a depth of meaning that went beyond comprehension. Her voice, tinged with disbelief, echoed painfully in the cavern of stark silence that followed. The truth was never supposed to hurt us like this, she whispered, her eyes blazing with raw emotion. It was in that moment I realized how tightly our lives had intertwined, how the roots of betrayal dug deep into the soil of our family tree, and that the thunder outside mirrored not just our turmoil, but the very blood that coursed through our veins. Elijah's grip on me faltered, uncertainty flickering in his eyes, perhaps a glimmer of recognition, realization, or perhaps something akin to fear, the very thing he wielded against us. What do you mean? What did our father do? He demanded, his bravado crumbling under the weight of revelation. Think. Mira's voice rosy, a battle cry wrapped in desperation. You think this darkness is yours alone, but it's part of us all. It's woven into the fabric of our existence. The secrets lie in the heart of our family, in the choices that were made. As the pieces began to click into place, I felt an almost unbearable pressure building within me. What if we've been fighting the wrong battles? I interjected, unable to ignore the connection. We were all yearning for the connection buried deep beneath the fractures we had allowed to fester. Enough of this. Elijah spat, anger boiling to the surface. Yet beneath the surface of his fury, I could sense a shift. Unfamiliar emotions dancing in his shadowy features. An unpredictable tide. Could there be remorse? Perhaps fear of confronting the source of his madness? What do you know about the choices made for us, thrown into this world of betrayal? Mira stepped forward, unwavering in the face of his rage. The choices made long before we were born. Choices that bound us to a legacy of secrets, none of us escaping the consequences. The truth is that our father made deals with dark forces. We never saw the ripple effect until now. The vulnerability in her tone dripped like fissures in the walls. Could they hold us together, or were they merely a prelude to our downfall? In that tense moment, the door swung open again, forcing me to brace myself, heart racing, readying for whatever storm was set to breach our shelter once more. But this time, it was not a figure cloaked in shadows. It was my mother, eyes wide with fierce determination. "I've heard enough," she declared, stepping boldly into the room. "All of you need to understand one truth. Love can create bonds, but it can also create scars. Our past will haunt us, but we cannot let it dictate our future." Her words rang powerful, reverberating throughout the room, rich with the weight of experiences lived. The silence stretched between us like taut string, humming with potential, yet waiting for the first cut. "You have the choice to rise from the ashes of our past," she continued, her voice full of conviction. "It takes vulnerability, healing. It takes togetherness, all of us." The room simmered with weighty realizations, emotions unraveling as like strands of silk slipping through fingers. I could feel the financial and emotional struggles Harlem faced, as though they were actual chains weighing heavily on my heart. He battled the instincts to retreat from confrontation, but with every moment, the walls of his past quaked under the gravitational pull of collective unity, calling forth our combined strength, a familial bond that defied the estrangements of years. "Mom," I faltered, moving closer to her, needing her warmth, her strength. "What do we do now? Together, we take back control," she proclaimed, fire igniting in her eyes. "We reclaim the narrative. If the world wants to expose our shadows, let's shine light on them. If there were wrongs done, we can confront them and right them." With her words, it felt as if the old chains that had bound us in fear began to tremble. There was an unmistakable shift as Elijah's grip slackened around me, confusion mingling with helplessness as he processed the truth unraveling around him. Inspiration ignited the dim spark in the hearts of those assembled, a call to step into the light of a new day. But then, just as I felt hope solidify into something tangible, the shadows stirred once more. A commanding voice boomed from the entrance. Victor positioned himself, defiant and unwavering, yet equally uncertain. "If we don't act now, if we don't find the witness, it will all be a waste. We might lose everything," he said, intensity flashing across his face. The chorus of clashing emotions filled the room, a cacophony of longing, fear, courage. The past roared like a tempest, while the promise of redemption glimmered just within our grasp. I could see Harlem and Mira locking eyes, communication flowing deeper than words. Their shared history unspooled beneath the weight of our revelations, converging towards an emotional equilibrium that swelled like a tide carrying us forward. "We must not let the remnants of our past destroy what we have left," Harlem finally said, his quiet strength resonating within me. "Together, we fight for our truth, for our family. We could reclaim our legacy," I affirmed, emboldened by their resolve. And as I felt the weight of those around me surge in affirmation, I knew this journey would not just reshape the fragments of our past. It would beckon us into the light, illuminating a path forward. Mira took a step closer, a fierce drive emerging in her eyes. "Let's start now. We owe it to our Sylvesto heel, to rise, and to be united against any darkness. Well, find that witness, and together, we will rewrite our story." With each of those spoken affirmations, the very air shifted, a pang of awakening blooming inexorably within. The very shadows that had once threatened to swallow us whole dispersed, rattled by the collective potency of our resolved hearts. With our newfound determination flickering like the candle tapping against its wick, I breathed deeply, steeling myself for the challenges ahead. We would confront our past together, speak our truths, and rise resilient into the light. As we readied ourselves to confront whatever lay beyond that doorway, whatever darkness, turmoil, or confrontation was enveloped in the weight of history, promise nestled delicately amidst despair. And just as we took our first steps forward into the uncertain unknown, I whispered with fervor, "Together, we choose to face tomorrow." With those words woven into the air, I felt something indescribable spark within us, an unwavering belief that we were no longer defined by blood, but rather by the journey we chose to embark upon. It was more than just a battle against darkness. It was the dawn of healing within fractured ties that would finally weave our shattered narrative into a tapestry of resilience and love, one that truly belonged to us. In that moment of solidarity, the echoes of our past faded, and I knew we were bound not by secrets, but by trust, the strongest thread we could weave into our future.